You shrink yourself. You do it so automatically, so reflexively, so completely without conscious awareness that you have stopped noticing it happens at all. You have a bold idea in the meeting and you preface it with, "This might be a crazy thought, but..." You tell someone about your goals and you add, "I know it sounds ambitious," as if ambition were something that requires a disclaimer. You achieve something significant and when someone acknowledges it you immediately deflect. You minimize it. You attribute it to luck, to timing, to the help of others, to anything except the truth, which is that you worked for it, you earned it, and you deserve the acknowledgement. You apologize for wanting more. You apologize for having standards. You apologize for refusing to settle for a life that feels like a fraction of what you are actually capable of. And you have been doing it for so long, in so many small and large ways, that it has become invisible to you. It feels like modesty. It feels like being realistic. It feels like not getting ahead of yourself, not making others uncomfortable, not being the kind of person who thinks too highly of themselves. It feels like virtue. It is not virtue. It is the slow, quiet, socially conditioned erasure of everything that is most alive and most powerful in you. Somewhere along the way, you absorbed a message. Maybe it came from your family. Maybe it came from your culture. Maybe it came from the specific people who were around you when you were young and forming your understanding of who gets to want things and who does not. Maybe it came from a moment of public failure that taught you the cost of visible ambition. Maybe it came from watching someone you loved be dismissed or ridiculed for daring to want more than their circumstances said they were allowed to want. Whatever the source, the message landed. And it went deep. The message was this: wanting more is dangerous. Ambition is arrogance. Knowing your worth makes others uncomfortable. Staying small keeps you safe. And you have been paying the price of that message every single day since. Today we dismantle it. Not gently, not politely, not with the kind of careful, apologetic approach that the message itself demands. Completely, permanently, from the root. Introduction. Let us be precise about what we are actually talking about. Because the word ambition has been so thoroughly misused, so consistently conflated with selfishness, ego, and the ruthless pursuit of success at others' expense, that many people have genuinely lost track of what it actually means. Ambition, in its truest and most honest form, is simply this: the refusal to accept a smaller life than the one you are capable of living. That is it. Nothing more sinister than that. Nothing more arrogant. Nothing that requires an apology or a disclaimer or the performative self-deprecation that most ambitious people have been trained to deploy before anyone accuses them of thinking too highly of themselves. Ambition is the decision to take your potential seriously. To treat your time as something precious rather than something to be consumed by default. To hold yourself to a standard that reflects what you actually believe you are capable of rather than what your circumstances or your social environment have suggested as appropriate for someone like you. This is not ego. Ego is the conviction that you are more important than other people. Ambition is the conviction that your life matters enough to be lived at full capacity. This is not selfishness. Selfishness is the pursuit of your interests at the direct expense of others. Ambition pursued with integrity lifts the people around you. It models possibility. It demonstrates that the ceiling is higher than most people have been told. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is the refusal to acknowledge your limitations or the contributions of others. Ambition fully coexists with humility, with gratitude, with the honest recognition that you have much to learn and much help to receive on the journey toward what you are reaching for. The conflation of ambition with these qualities is not an accident. It is a social mechanism. A way of managing the discomfort that genuine ambition creates in the people who have not given themselves permission to have it. And it works precisely because ambitious people are, by nature, sensitive to the responses of others. They care about their relationships. They care about how they are perceived. And so the social pressure to apologize for their ambition, to make it smaller and less threatening, lands with particular force on the exact people it is most designed to suppress. By the time you finish this audiobook, you will understand the full architecture of how ambition gets suppressed. Where it comes from, who benefits from it, what it has cost you, and exactly how to reclaim it, not as a performance of confidence you do not feel, but as the genuine, grounded, unapologetic expression of who you actually are and what you actually believe your life is for. This is not a book about hustling harder. It is not a book about ignoring your relationships in pursuit of your goals. It is not a book about the kind of aggressive, zero-sum ambition that treats every other person as a competitor to be defeated. It is a book about the quiet, profound, life-altering decision to stop making yourself smaller than you are, and to start living like someone who takes their own potential seriously. Part 1. How Ambition Gets Killed. Chapter 1. The Original Wound, Where the Apology Started. No one is born apologizing for their ambition. Watch a young child, a toddler who has decided they want to climb the bookshelf, build the tallest tower, run the fastest, sing the loudest, ask the most questions, stay up the latest, know everything about the thing that has captured their attention right now. There is no apology in that child. There is no disclaimer preceding their desire. There is no performative modesty about the scale of what they want or the confidence with which they pursue it. There is only the wanting. Pure, unfiltered, unembarrassed wanting. The full-throated expression of a self that has not yet learned to make itself smaller. Something happens to that child. Not in one dramatic moment. Not through a single defining experience that can be pointed to and blamed. But gradually, through accumulation, through the slow, steady education in the social rules about who gets to want what and how loudly they are permitted to want it. The ambition does not get killed. It gets driven underground. Let us trace exactly how this happens. Because understanding the mechanism is the first step toward dismantling it. The first way ambition gets suppressed is through what psychologists call conditional positive regard. In a healthy developmental environment, a child receives love and approval that is largely unconditional. It is there whether they succeed or fail, whether they conform or deviate, whether they are impressive or ordinary on any given day. But in many families, in many schools, in many social environments, the love and approval that children receive is subtly conditional. It comes more readily when they are modest, when they do not ask for too much, when they do not express too much confidence, when they do not make others uncomfortable with the scale of their wanting. The child learns this lesson with the speed and precision of a nervous system that is calibrated for exactly this kind of social feedback. They learn. Big wanting gets a negative response. Small wanting gets approval and warmth. Therefore, make the wanting small. Make it quiet. Make it apologetic. And the beautiful, terrible efficiency of the developing brain is that it does not store this as a lesson it has learned. It stores it as a truth about the world, about who is permitted to want things, about what is appropriate for someone like them. By the time this child is an adult, the shrinking is automatic. It does not feel like a conditioned response. It feels like modesty. It feels like being realistic. It feels like wisdom about the way the world actually works. But it is none of these things. It is the fossilized residue of a child's survival strategy. A strategy that made sense in the original environment and that has outlived its usefulness by decades. The second way ambition gets suppressed is through social comparison and the visibility of others' reactions to success. Human beings are exquisitely sensitive to how ambition is received by the people around them. And for most people, growing up, the observation was not encouraging. The kid who was too confident got cut down. The colleague who expressed their ambitions openly got mocked behind their back. The family member who reached for more than their circumstances suggested they were entitled to receive not support but skepticism, not encouragement but a subtle and sometimes not so subtle message: who do you think you are? And the ambitious person, watching this, drew the obvious conclusion. Visible ambition is dangerous. It attracts ridicule. It invites the hostility of people who have not given themselves permission to want the same things. It makes you a target. Better to want quietly. Better to pursue cautiously. Better to achieve and then minimize the achievement before anyone has the chance to accuse you of thinking too highly of yourself. This strategy is not irrational given the social evidence that produced it. The problem is that it is self-defeating in ways that compound dramatically over time. Because the person who never allows their ambition to be visible never receives the mentorship, the opportunities, the relationships, and the social reinforcement that visible ambition attracts. They move more slowly and with more isolation than their potential warrants. And they attribute this slowness to a lack of capability rather than to the strategy of invisibility that is actually causing it. The third way ambition gets suppressed is through early failures that were handled badly. Every ambitious person fails. Ambition, by definition, involves reaching for things that are not yet within easy grasp. And reaching for things that are not yet within easy grasp means sometimes, often, falling short. In a healthy environment, these early failures are contextualized and processed in ways that preserve the ambitious impulse while providing useful information about what needs to be developed or adjusted. In an unhealthy environment, early failures become verdicts. You tried and you failed. And the story that was constructed around that failure, whether by others or by you, was not the healthy story. The story that every ambitious person fails early and often and that failure is simply the tuition for growth. The story that was constructed was the damaging one. That your failure revealed something fundamental about your capacity. That your ambition exceeded your actual potential. That you should have known better than to reach for something that was not meant for you. This verdict lands differently at different ages. But whenever it lands, it has the same effect. It does not kill the ambition. It burrows it underground and surrounds it with fear. With the conviction that the next time you reach, the verdict will be confirmed. That it is safer not to reach. That the cost of visible failure is more than the cost of invisible smallness. And the invisible smallness, over time, becomes the personality. Becomes the identity. Becomes what people call being realistic, being humble, being a person who does not let their ego get ahead of their actual capabilities. When in truth it is none of these things. It is the wound. It is the original message, received too early and processed without the cognitive tools to evaluate it accurately, that you are someone who needs to be careful about wanting too much. Here is what that message has cost you. Not in abstract terms, in the specific, concrete currency of your actual life. Every time you did not apply for the opportunity because you did not feel qualified enough, even though your qualifications were adequate and what you actually lacked was permission to try. Every time you priced your services lower than the value you were delivering because charging what you were worth felt presumptuous. Every time you stayed in a relationship, a job, a living situation, a set of circumstances that you knew were beneath what you were capable of creating, because reaching for more felt dangerous. Every time you watched someone else step into a role, a recognition, an opportunity that you were at least as equipped for, and felt the familiar combination of envy and the equally familiar resignation that this was simply not for someone like you. Every conversation you walked away from feeling like you had talked yourself down in real time. Minimized your achievements before anyone else had the chance to. Qualified your ambitions with disclaimers that made them smaller and safer and less threatening to anyone who might be made uncomfortable by the full, unqualified version of what you want. These costs are not abstract. They are the lived texture of your daily life. They are the specific shape that the original wound has taken as it has grown through the years of your adulthood. And they will continue to accumulate for the rest of your life if you do not address the wound directly. Not the symptoms, the wound. Chapter 2. The Social Contract of Smallness, Why Ambition Makes People Uncomfortable. There is a reason that ambitious people are trained to apologize. It is not random. It is not simply the result of cultural misunderstanding or generational miscommunication. There is a specific social mechanism at work. And understanding it with clarity will free you from its power in a way that no amount of self-affirmation can match. The mechanism is this. When you are ambitious, when you genuinely, visibly, unapologetically take your potential seriously and pursue it with full commitment, you create a problem for the people around you who are not doing the same. Not because you have done anything to harm them. Not because your success diminishes theirs in any objective sense. But because your ambition, by its mere existence, raises a question that the unambitious person does not want to answer. The question is, if this person can reach for more, why am I not? This question is deeply uncomfortable. Because the honest answer, for most people, is not that they lack the capability. It is that they lack the permission. That somewhere along the way they absorbed the same messages you did about who gets to want things and how much. That they made the same bargain of smallness that felt safe at the time and has become, over years, the entire shape of their life. Your ambition confronts them with this. Not aggressively, not intentionally, simply by existing. And human beings, when confronted with an uncomfortable truth about themselves, almost never respond by immediately changing. They almost always respond first by attacking the source of the discomfort. This is the social mechanism behind the hostility that ambitious people face. The eye roll when you share your goals. The, "Who does she think she is?" whispered after you leave the room. The unsolicited warnings about not getting too big for your boots. The subtle undermining that begins exactly when your progress becomes too visible to ignore. The jokes that have a kernel of genuine discomfort in them, disguised as affection or humor. None of this is about you. Not really. All of it is about the person delivering it and the bargain they made. The life they are not living. The potential they are not pursuing. The ambition they shrunk decades ago and have been defending the decision to shrink ever since. This does not mean you should feel contempt for these people. Contempt is the wrong response. The right response is compassion. Because the person most harmed by their attack on your ambition is not you. It is them. Every time they discourage someone else's ambition, they confirm their own decision to abandon theirs. They deepen the investment in the story that smallness is wisdom. That ambition is arrogance. That wanting more than your circumstances offer is a character flaw rather than a human birthright. But compassion does not mean compliance. Compassion does not mean making yourself smaller so that others are more comfortable. Compassion does not mean apologizing for your ambition because its existence disturbs someone else's peace with their own limitations. Understanding where the hostility comes from allows you to stop taking it personally. And stopping taking it personally is the first step toward refusing to let it shape you. Now, let us look at a more subtle and more dangerous version of this social pressure. The hostility from strangers and acquaintances is relatively easy to identify and resist once you understand its source. Much harder to navigate is the same hostility, more softly expressed, from the people you love. Your parents who worry that your ambitions are setting you up for disappointment. Not because they do not love you. Because they do. Because they have absorbed the same messages about who gets to want things and they are terrified of watching you pay the price of reaching for what they were taught was not available to you. Your friends who get quieter as your success becomes more visible. Not because they are bad people. Because the friendship was built on an implicit understanding of relative positioning. And when that positioning shifts, when you begin moving at a pace or toward a destination that the friendship was not designed to accommodate, the implicit contract feels violated. Your partner who is supportive in theory but whose behavior subtly communicates that they were more comfortable when you were less ambitious. Not because they do not want good things for you. Because your growing ambition raises questions about the relationship, about shared goals, about whether the two of you are moving in the same direction. These are not enemies. These are people who love you. And they are, nonetheless, exerting pressure on you to be smaller. To be safer. To be the version of yourself that fits more comfortably into the social landscape they have built their expectations around. This pressure is the hardest to resist. Because it comes wrapped in love. It comes with the genuine concern of people who matter to you. It comes with the real possibility that pursuing your full ambition at full speed will cost you something in these relationships that you genuinely do not want to lose. And here is the honest truth about that. It might. Not all relationships survive the growth of one of the people in them. Not all friendships are built to accommodate one friend becoming significantly more than the friendship was designed for. Not all family dynamics have room for the member who decides to exceed what the family collectively believes is the ceiling. This is real, and it is painful, and it deserves to be acknowledged rather than minimized. But here is the other truth. The relationships that cannot survive your growth were never fully supporting you. They were supporting a version of you that was small enough to be unthreatening, manageable enough to maintain the existing dynamic, limited enough to keep the implicit contract of relative positioning intact. These relationships were offering you something: comfort, belonging, the particular warmth of being known and accepted by people who have known you for a long time. But they were withholding something equally important: the permission to be everything you are capable of being. And you get to decide which is more important. Not easily, not without grief, not without the genuine weight of what is being chosen and what is being, at least partially, released. But you get to decide. And the decision to choose your full self, your full ambition, your full potential, over the comfort of relationships that require you to be less than you are, is not selfishness. It is the most fundamental act of self-respect available to a human being. Chapter 3. The Gender Dimension, the particular weight women carry. We need to talk about something that most books on ambition address inadequately or avoid entirely. The suppression of ambition is not gender neutral. While both men and women face social pressure to manage and moderate their ambitions in various ways, the specific texture of that pressure, the particular forms it takes, the depth at which it operates, and the specific costs it extracts, are dramatically different across gender. Women, in most cultures and in most social environments, face a set of social penalties for visible ambition that men simply do not face to the same degree. And understanding this is not about grievance or victimhood. It is about naming clearly what you are actually dealing with so that you can navigate it strategically rather than being blindsided by it or, worse, internalizing it as evidence of your own inadequacy. The research on this is extensive and consistent. Studies in organizational psychology show that men who display ambition are consistently rated as more likable and more competent. Women who display the identical ambition are consistently rated as more competent but less likable. This is not a subtle effect. It is dramatic and reproducible across cultures, industries, and demographic groups. This creates what researchers call a double bind for ambitious women. Be ambitious and be seen as cold, aggressive, unfeminine, or difficult. Suppress the ambition and be seen as less competent, less leadership ready, less deserving of the opportunities that ambition unlocks. The double bind has no clean solution within the existing social framework. Which is precisely why naming it clearly matters. Because the woman who is navigating this bind without understanding it will inevitably attribute the social friction she is encountering to something about herself. Her personality, her approach, her likability, her failure to find the right way to be ambitious without making others uncomfortable. When the friction is not primarily about her at all, it is about the social script for what women are supposed to want and how they are supposed to want it. The social script says this: women are supposed to be ambitious on behalf of others. For their families, for their teams, for their communities. Ambition that is other-directed is acceptable, even admirable. But ambition for oneself, for one's own achievement, recognition, wealth, power, and actualization, is coded as selfish, unfeminine, and threatening. This script is absorbed so early and so thoroughly that most women enforce it on themselves long before anyone external has a chance to do so. The internalized voice that says "Who do you think you are?" when the ambitious idea surfaces. The reflexive disclaimer before sharing the goal. The minimization of the achievement before anyone else has the chance to reduce it. The preemptive apology for the space being taken up. This is not weakness. This is the consequence of decades of social conditioning operating on a nervous system that was calibrated for exactly this kind of social feedback. And it shows up in specific, concrete ways that are worth examining. The negotiation that does not happen because asking for more feels presumptuous. The research consistently shows that women negotiate their salaries far less frequently than men do. Not because they are less aware that negotiation is possible, but because the social cost of negotiation, the perception of being difficult, demanding, or insufficiently grateful, feels disproportionate to the potential gain. The credit that is deflected. The meeting where the idea was yours but you find yourself saying we came up with it. The project that succeeded largely on the strength of your work and your leadership but that you describe as a team effort in a way that renders your specific contribution invisible. The ambition that is expressed apologetically. I know this sounds crazy, but I was thinking maybe I could. I might be wrong about this, but I don't know if this makes sense. The preemptive self-deprecation that makes the idea smaller and safer before it has even been fully articulated. The goals that are revised downward before they are shared, not because the original goal was unrealistic, because the full version of the goal felt too exposed, too much, too easy to mock or dismiss. All of this is the double bind in action. The constant navigation of a social landscape that has not caught up to the truth of what women are capable of and what they deserve to want. Now, what do you do with this? First, you name it. You stop attributing the social friction of your ambition to something intrinsically wrong with you or with your approach. You understand that you are navigating a genuinely difficult landscape that was not designed with your full participation in mind. And you give yourself credit for every inch of ground you have covered in that landscape. Second, you stop self-policing in advance of external policing. The most damaging consequence of the double bind is not what others do to ambitious women. It is what ambitious women learn to do to themselves. The preemptive shrinking, the reflexive minimization, the self-inflicted version of the external pressure, internalized so thoroughly that it operates without any external trigger. Stop apologizing before anyone has asked you to. Stop minimizing before anyone has challenged you. Stop making yourself smaller in anticipation of the discomfort that your full size might create. Because here is what the research also shows. The women who navigate this landscape most successfully are not the ones who find the perfect balance between ambitious and likable. That balance does not exist on terms that are comfortable for everyone, and searching for it is an infinite, exhausting project that will keep you perpetually smaller than you need to be. The women who navigate it most successfully are the ones who become genuinely comfortable with the social friction that their ambition creates. Who understand that some people will be made uncomfortable by them and make peace with that. Who develop enough internal groundedness that the external discomfort does not land as a verdict on their worth or their legitimacy. Who decide, in other words, to stop apologizing. And who discover, usually faster than they expected, that the world does not end when they do. Chapter 4. The Class Dimension, Ambition When You Were Not Supposed to Have It. There is another dimension to the suppression of ambition that is discussed even less frequently than the gender dimension. And it is, for the people it affects, often the deepest and most painful layer of the wound. The class dimension. Ambition that exceeds your family of origin's social and economic position is one of the most complicated and most psychologically costly forms of ambition that exists. And it is almost never discussed honestly in mainstream conversations about success and self-actualization. The middle class and upper middle class narratives of ambition assume a particular starting point. A social environment in which ambition is modeled, encouraged, and practically supported. In which the infrastructure of success, the education, the networks, the financial cushion that allows for risk-taking, the social capital that opens doors, is either directly provided or at least understood and accessible. For the person whose family of origin did not have these things, ambition takes on a completely different character. It is not simply the expression of a natural drive that the social environment is more or less supportive of. It is an act of departure, of crossing a threshold, of becoming someone different from the people who raised you and who love you and whose social world does not have a natural place for the person you are becoming. This crossing comes with costs that comfortable narratives of ambition do not acknowledge. The cost of code switching, of learning to operate fluently in social and professional environments that were built by and for people whose backgrounds are different from yours. Of performing a fluency that is partly real and partly manufactured. Of the exhausting constant vigilance of monitoring whether your language, your references, your assumptions, your behavior are marking you as out of place. The cost of the divided self. The person who goes home for the holidays and finds that the person they have become does not entirely fit the family they came from. Who cannot fully be themselves in either world. Who carries the permanent low-level grief of belonging completely to neither. The cost of survivor guilt. The consciousness that you have made it to a place that others from your background have not. The complicated relationship with your own success that comes from knowing that the accident of your particular ambition, your particular opportunity, your particular combination of luck and drive and circumstance, has separated you from people who were equally capable and equally deserving. The cost of the imposter. The persistent sense, regardless of how much evidence accumulates to the contrary, that you do not actually belong in the places your ambition has taken you. That it is a matter of time before someone notices that you should not be here. That your presence in the rooms you have worked so hard to enter is provisional rather than earned. And, perhaps most painfully, the cost of the messages from home. Not always deliberately discouraging, not always unkind, but messages, nonetheless, that carry within them the accumulated weight of generations of people who learned that wanting more than your circumstances offer is a recipe for disappointment, for being made to look foolish, for the pain of trying and failing in front of everyone who told you to be realistic. Who do you think you are? This is not always said with cruelty. Often it is said with love, with the specific, aching love of people who have been disappointed before and who cannot bear to watch someone they love walk into the same disappointment. But it lands as a verdict regardless of the love it is wrapped in. And for the ambitious person from a working class or lower income background, this verdict has the particular weight of coming from the people who know you best. Who have known you longest. Who love you most completely. And whose vision of what is possible for you is bounded by what was possible for them. Here is what you need to understand about this. Your ambition is not a betrayal of where you came from. Your ambition is not a judgment on the people who chose not to cross the threshold, or who could not, or who never had the opportunity, or who tried and fell short and returned. Your ambition is not a declaration that your background was inadequate or that the people you came from are less than the people you are becoming. Your ambition is simply you, taking seriously a potential that has always been there, that belongs to you as completely as it belongs to anyone, regardless of the circumstances of your birth or the social position of your family or the messages that were delivered to you before you had the tools to evaluate whether they were true. The people who benefited from their circumstances, who grew up in environments where ambition was encouraged and practically supported, did not earn their ambition. They inherited a permission structure that made it easier to express. They had their permission granted. You have to grant it to yourself. And granting it to yourself, doing the internal work of deciding that your ambition is legitimate regardless of where you started, is one of the most radical and most consequential acts available to you. It is not easy. Nothing about the class dimension of ambition is easy. The crossing is genuinely costly. The divided self is genuinely painful. The imposter experience is genuinely real, even when it is genuinely wrong about your belonging. But the alternative is not easier. The alternative is the permanent grief of potential that was never given permission to be expressed. The slow erosion of the life that was possible if only you had decided that possible was enough justification to reach for it. You did not come from where you came from to stay where you started. Your circumstances of origin are part of your story. They are not the boundary of your story. Chapter 5. The ambition-shame spiral, how it operates in real time. We have examined where the suppression of ambition comes from. Now we need to look at how it operates in your present-day life. In the specific, real-time moments when you are in the meeting, in the conversation, in the negotiation, in the moment of achievement or the moment of reaching, and the familiar shame spiral activates. Because it does not just operate in the big moments. It operates in dozens of small moments every day that you have stopped noticing because they have become so automatic. Let us slow this down and look at exactly what happens. The spiral typically begins with an authentic impulse. A genuine desire. A thought that has the quality of full wanting, of the unfiltered expression of what you actually want and what you actually believe you are capable of. This thought does not last long in its pure form. Because within milliseconds of its appearance, the monitoring system activates. The monitoring system is the internalized social voice. The composite of every message you have ever received about who gets to want things and how much. It scans the authentic impulse and evaluates it against the implicit social rules it has been carrying for years, sometimes decades. And in most cases, it finds a problem. The authentic impulse is too big, too bold, too likely to make someone uncomfortable, too exposed to the specific risks that visibility brings, too far from what someone with your particular history, your particular gender, your particular background, your particular track record of previous failures, is supposed to want. And so the monitoring system does what it was designed to do. It modifies the impulse. It makes it smaller. It adds the qualifiers and the disclaimers and the preemptive self-deprecation that will make it more socially acceptable. More modest. More like the expression of someone who knows their place. And what comes out of your mouth, or what makes it onto the job application, or what gets proposed in the meeting, or what gets asked for in the negotiation, is not the authentic impulse. It is the monitored, modified, pre-apologized version of it. And you do not even notice the gap. Because the monitoring system operates so fast and so automatically that by the time you are aware of having a thought, the original thought has already been replaced by its safer, smaller version. This is what makes the shame spiral so insidious. It is invisible, it happens before consciousness, and its output, the smaller, safer, apologetic expression of the original wanting, feels like your authentic voice. Feels like what you actually wanted. Feels like the reasonable, realistic version of the impulse rather than the suppressed version of it. But there is a signal. There is always a signal. The signal is the feeling that arrives after. The faint dissatisfaction. The slight resentment. The sense of having sold yourself short in a way you cannot quite articulate. The feeling of watching the opportunity, the conversation, the recognition, the outcome, narrow into something that is less than what it could have been if you had said the full thing, asked for the full amount, proposed the full idea, expressed the full ambition. This feeling is important. It is the authentic self communicating that something was lost in translation. That the monitoring system activated and the cost was real. Most people, when they feel this signal, do not trace it back to the monitoring system. They do not recognize it as the consequence of the preemptive shrinking. They attribute it to external causes. The other person's reaction, the difficulty of the situation, bad luck, bad timing, and then they do it again in the next moment. Let us look at the specific ways the spiral manifests in daily life. The hedged statement. Instead of, "I think we should pursue this direction," you say, "I was wondering if maybe it might be worth considering." The hedging removes commitment, which feels safer. But it also removes authority. And every hedged statement trains the people around you to take your ideas less seriously. And this reduced seriousness becomes evidence, to the monitoring system, that your ideas were not worth expressing with confidence. Which makes the next statement more hedged. The spiral deepens. The preemptive disclaimer. "This might be totally off base, but I don't know if this is relevant, but you probably already know this, but." These disclaimers are not expressions of genuine uncertainty. They are preemptive strikes against the possibility of being dismissed. They try to reduce the social risk of the idea by getting the dismissal in before anyone else has the chance to deliver it. But what they actually do is invite dismissal. They signal to everyone in the room that the person speaking does not fully believe in what they are about to say. And when you do not believe in what you are saying, why would anyone else? The achievement deflection. Someone acknowledges your success and you immediately minimize it. Oh, it was really a team effort. I just got lucky with the timing. Anyone could have done it. It's not that big a deal really. This feels like modesty. Sometimes it even feels like accuracy. Sometimes it is partially true. Teams do contribute to outcomes. Timing does matter. These are real things. But notice what you never say. You never say, "Thank you. I worked really hard for that and I'm proud of it." Even when those words would also be completely true. The deflection is not humility. Humility is the accurate assessment of your contributions alongside the accurate assessment of others' contributions. The deflection is the suppression of your contribution in advance of anyone challenging it. And what it costs you, over years, is the accumulated record of your own capability. The evidence base that your brain would use to build genuine confidence. Every time you deflect an acknowledgement, you rob your own nervous system of a piece of evidence that says you are capable, that your work has value, that your ambition is justified. The downscaled ask. You were going to ask for 10. You asked for 7, not because you genuinely assessed that 7 was the right number, but because 10 felt like too much. Too bold. Too likely to produce the word no, which somehow feels like a verdict on your worth rather than simply a negotiating position that can be countered. The downscaled ask consistently produces downscaled outcomes. And the downscaled outcomes, over time, confirm the monitoring system's assessment that big asking is not for someone like you. The spiral deepens. Breaking the spiral requires first being able to see it operating. To catch the monitoring system in action. To notice the gap between the authentic impulse and the modified version that makes it into expression. And then, incrementally, consistently, to close that gap. To begin expressing the fuller version. To learn, through repeated small experiments, that the consequences of full expression are almost never as catastrophic as the monitoring system predicted. That the world does not end when you say what you actually want. That people do not collapse in outrage when you take up the space your potential actually requires. That the apology, it turns out, was never necessary. Part 2. Reclaiming your ambition. Chapter 6. The permission structure, why you do not need anyone's approval. Here is something that will sound obvious when you hear it and that almost nobody actually operates from. You do not need permission to be ambitious. Not from your family, not from your colleagues, not from your social environment, not from the culture, not from the people who are made uncomfortable by the scale of what you want. Not from the voice inside you that has been carrying their messages for so long that it sounds like your own. You do not need permission. Ambition is not something that is granted. It is not something that is earned through sufficient demonstration of modesty and self-deprecation. It is not something that is available only to people with the right background, the right credentials, the right gender, the right track record, the right level of already demonstrated success. Ambition is something you have always had. It was there before the monitoring system was installed. It was there before the messages arrived about who gets to want things. It was there in the child who had not yet learned to be afraid of their own wanting. It is still there. The practice of reclaiming your ambition is not the practice of becoming something you are not. It is the practice of removing what was placed on top of something you always were. But there is a specific obstacle that sits between the intellectual understanding of this and the actual, lived experience of it. And we need to address it directly. The obstacle is what psychologists call the internalized permission structure. The invisible framework, constructed from years of social conditioning, that governs who you believe you are allowed to be and what you believe you are allowed to want. This framework does not feel like an external constraint. It feels like you. It feels like your actual assessment of your own capabilities and your own worth and your own appropriate place in the social and professional landscape. But it is not you. It is the accumulated verdict of people and systems and experiences that were evaluating you with incomplete information, through their own limiting frameworks, during periods when you did not have the cognitive tools to interrogate their assessments. It is, in other words, other people's judgment about your potential, calcified through years of repetition into something that feels like your own. Dismantling the internalized permission structure is not primarily an intellectual exercise. If it were, it would be simple. You would read the arguments, recognize their validity, and update your behavior accordingly. It does not work that way. Because the permission structure lives not primarily in your conscious beliefs but in your nervous system. In the automatic responses that activate before you have a chance to think. In the felt sense of too much and not allowed and who do you think you are that arrives before any conscious evaluation of the actual situation. Dismantling it requires working at the level of the nervous system. Repeatedly, incrementally, doing the thing that the permission structure says you are not allowed to do. And discovering, through direct experience, that the predicted catastrophe does not materialize. That the world does not punish you for taking up the space your potential requires. Every time you express the full idea instead of the hedged version, and the room does not collapse, you create a piece of evidence that the permission structure's predictions are wrong. Every time you ask for the full amount instead of the downscaled version, and the conversation does not end in disaster, you create a piece of evidence that your wanting is legitimate. Every time you receive an acknowledgement of your success and allow yourself to say, "Thank you, I worked hard for that," instead of deflecting, you create a piece of evidence that your achievement deserves to be recognized. These pieces of evidence accumulate, slowly at first, then faster as the nervous system begins to update its predictions. As the automatic threat response to visible ambition begins to attenuate. As the felt sense of too much is gradually replaced by something that feels more like simply enough. Like exactly the right amount of ambition for exactly the person you are. This is not a linear process. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when the old monitoring system roars back with particular force, usually in response to particularly high-stakes situations, particularly charged social dynamics, or particularly resonant echoes of the original conditions that installed the permission structure in the first place. These moments are not failures. They are information. They tell you something about the specific situations and dynamics in which the old programming is most active. And that information is useful. It tells you where to direct your practice. Which specific situations most require the deliberate choice to express rather than suppress. There is also a crucial distinction between the genuine recalibration of the permission structure and the performance of confidence that is sometimes confused with it. The performance of confidence is the adoption of an ambitious persona that sits on top of the unchanged underlying permission structure. It is the person who has learned to talk about their goals boldly and publicly while still being driven, at the level of actual decision-making, by the old monitoring system. Who speaks confidently but negotiates timidly. Who expresses large ambitions but makes small moves. The performance can be maintained for a while. But it is cognitively expensive and ultimately unstable because the internal permission structure keeps generating behavior that is inconsistent with the performance. The gap between the confident persona and the fearful underlying reality creates a kind of exhausting inauthenticity that, over time, erodes both the performance and the self-respect that genuine confidence is supposed to produce. The genuine recalibration is slower and less dramatic. It does not produce the sudden transformation narrative that sells books and motivational speeches. It produces a gradual, genuine, permanent shift in what your nervous system experiences as available to you. In what your automatic responses look like in the moments that matter. And it produces something that the performance never can. The quiet, solid, unshakable sense that your ambition is not something you are apologizing for. It is something you are living from. Chapter 7. The integrity of ambition, wanting fully without losing yourself. There is a fear that many ambitious people carry that we have not yet addressed directly. The fear that if they fully stop apologizing for their ambition, if they fully reclaim their wanting and pursue it without the preemptive self-deprecation and the constant monitoring for others' discomfort, they will become someone they do not want to be. They will become ruthless, cold, the kind of person who sacrifices relationships and integrity in pursuit of their goals. The kind of person who uses others, who loses perspective, who gets so consumed by the pursuit of more that they forget what the more was supposed to be for. This fear is not irrational. There are people who have pursued ambition in exactly these ways, who have sacrificed their humanity on the altar of their goals and arrived at the destination having lost something more important than they gained. But this is not the inevitable consequence of ambitious. It is not even the likely consequence. And confusing ambitious with ruthlessness is one of the most effective ways that the permission structure protects itself from being dismantled. Because as long as you believe that fully claiming your ambition means becoming someone you do not want to be, the monitoring system has a powerful ally in your own values. Let us separate these things clearly. Ambition is about what you want, the direction and the scale of your reaching. Integrity is about how you pursue it, the values and the standards you maintain on the way. These are not in tension. They are not even in conversation with each other in any fundamental sense. Ambition tells you where to go. Integrity tells you how to get there. And the two can be fully, simultaneously, completely expressed without any compromise to either. The ruthless pursuit of ambition at the expense of others, at the expense of integrity, at the expense of the relationships and the values that make success meaningful, is not ambitious ambition. It is ambition without integrity. And the problem is not the ambition. The problem is the missing integrity. Adding integrity does not reduce ambition. It focuses it. It gives it direction and meaning and the kind of durability that ambition without integrity almost never sustains. Because here is what the research on long-term success consistently shows. The people who achieve and sustain extraordinary things are not the ones who sacrificed their integrity to get there. They are the ones who made their integrity non-negotiable, who decided that how they got to where they were going was as important as getting there, who built reputations for trustworthiness, for caring about the people around them, for pursuing their goals in ways that created value for others rather than simply extracting it. These people were ambitious, profoundly, unapologetically ambitious, and they were also, simultaneously, deeply principled about the means of that ambition. The integration of ambition and integrity is not a compromise. It is a completion. It is the full picture of what ambitious looks like when it is healthy, sustainable, and genuinely satisfying to live from the inside. Now let us talk about a specific aspect of integrity in ambition that is often overlooked. The integrity of your relationships. Ambitious people are sometimes advised to be ruthless about who they spend time with. To cut anyone from their life who is not adding value, who is not moving at the same pace, who is not aligned with the destination they are pursuing. This advice is, at best, incomplete. At worst, it is a recipe for the kind of relational impoverishment that makes success feel hollow even when it arrives. Your relationships are not a productivity variable. The people you love are not resources to be optimized. And the genuine, reciprocal, non-transactional connections you build with others over a lifetime are themselves one of the most important expressions of a life well lived. What ambitious integrity requires in relationships is not the ruthless curation that some success culture prescribes. It is honest, compassionate navigation of the genuine tensions that ambition creates. It requires telling the truth about who you are becoming and where you are going. Not as a declaration of superiority but as an act of respect for the people who love you. Giving them the real picture of your ambitions and your trajectory so that they can make genuine choices about whether and how to remain in relationship with the person you are growing into. It requires maintaining genuine care and investment in your closest relationships even as your ambitions pull you toward new environments and new demands on your time and energy. Not because your relationships are more important than your goals, but because the person who sacrifices every relationship for their goals usually discovers, at the destination, that they have nothing left to share the arrival with. It requires the grace to acknowledge when someone in your life is genuinely not going in the same direction. And the courage to have the honest conversation about what that means for the relationship, rather than the comfortable option of maintaining the relationship on false pretenses while allowing the actual connection to gradually decay. Ambitious integrity in relationships is harder than ruthless curation. It requires more courage, more honesty, and more willingness to sit with the genuine difficulty of loving people whose paths are diverging from yours. But it produces something that ruthless curation never can. The experience of being fully known and fully loved by people who see the whole of who you are, ambitions and all, and choose to remain. That is worth protecting. Chapter 8. The Language of Ambition, How to Speak Your Wanting Without Apology. We have talked extensively about the internal work of reclaiming ambition. Now we need to get concrete about how it manifests in the specific language you use. Because language is not just the expression of your internal state, it actively shapes your internal state. The words you use to describe your ambitions, your achievements, your value, your goals, determine not just how others perceive you but how you perceive yourself. And most ambitious people are using language that is working against them. Let us start with the language of self-description. Most people, when asked what they do or who they are professionally, engage in a form of preemptive minimization. They describe their role or their work in the most modest, least imposing terms available. Not because the work is not significant, but because claiming the full significance of it feels presumptuous. The consultant who says, "I do a bit of strategic advising for companies," when what they actually do is transform the organizational strategy of mid-market businesses and has produced millions of dollars of value for their clients. The entrepreneur who says, "I run a small online business," when what they have actually built is a seven-figure enterprise that employs 12 people and serves thousands of customers. The researcher who says, "I do some academic work," when what they have actually produced is a body of scholarship that has influenced the thinking of thousands of practitioners in their field. The minimization feels safe. It avoids the social risk of seeming like you are boasting. It preemptively deflects the judgment that might follow from claiming the full scope of what you have built and what you are capable of. But it also prevents people from understanding your actual value, from knowing what you can offer, from connecting you with the opportunities that would be obvious if they knew the full picture, from giving you the kind of referrals and partnerships and collaborations that come when people understand what you are actually capable of. The language of unapologetic ambition does not boast. It does not inflate. It does not claim more than is accurate or omit the contributions of others. But it also does not reduce. It does not trim. It does not make smaller what is actually large. It describes what is true in the fullest terms that are accurate. Not for the sake of impression management. For the sake of honest communication. Now let us look at the language of goals. When most people share their ambitions, they preface them in ways that communicate apology. "I'm working toward," when what you mean is, "I am building." "I'm hoping to eventually," when what you mean is, "I intend to." "I'd love to someday," when what you mean is, "I am committed to." "I'm trying to," when what you mean is, "I am." These linguistic choices are not neutral. They communicate your relationship to your own goals. They tell the person you are speaking to whether you believe in what you are pursuing or whether you are holding it at arm's length, maintaining plausible deniability in case it does not work out. And they tell yourself the same thing. Every time you describe your goal as something you are hoping for or working toward or dreaming about rather than something you are committed to and building toward, you reinforce the monitoring system's assessment that this is too much to fully claim. The language of committed ambition is declarative, not arrogant, not aggressive, simply clear. I am building a company that will transform how this industry approaches customer service. I am writing a book that will change how readers think about their relationship with money. I am pursuing the VP role in the next 18 months. These statements are not predictions. They do not guarantee the outcome. They are commitments, declarations of intention that are held with the same certainty that you bring to any other serious endeavor in your life. And they are received differently. Not because they are louder or more impressive. Because they carry the quality of a person who has given themselves permission to want what they want without apology. Now let us look at the language of value and compensation. One of the places where the cost of apologetic ambition is most immediate and most measurable is in how people talk about what they charge, what they earn, and what they ask for. The language of apologetic value sounds like this. I know this might seem like a lot, but my rate is. As if the rate itself requires a defense before it is even heard. I was hoping for something in the range of. As if your compensation is a wish rather than a fair exchange for the value you deliver. I completely understand if the budget doesn't stretch to preemptively accepting a lower offer before one has even been made. I know I don't have as much experience as some candidates, but leading with your limitations before your strengths have had a chance to be evaluated. This language communicates, before any negotiation has begun, that you are uncertain about your own value. And uncertainty about value is the single most reliable predictor of undercompensation. Because compensation is not primarily determined by your actual value. It is determined by the perceived confidence with which you communicate your value. The language of unapologetic value is different. My rate for this project is X. Stated clearly, followed by silence. Not defended. Not apologized for, simply stated as the accurate price for the value being offered. I'm looking for a compensation package in the range of X to Y. Stated as the opening of a conversation, not as a hope or a wish, but as a clearly communicated professional expectation. Based on my experience and the results I've delivered, I believe a salary of X is appropriate. Grounded in specific evidence, stated without qualification. This language does not guarantee the outcome you are asking for. Sometimes the budget is genuinely limited. Sometimes the other party's assessment of the value genuinely differs from yours. These are real possibilities that require their own navigation. But language that communicates certainty about your value creates fundamentally different negotiations than language that communicates uncertainty. It establishes a baseline of seriousness about what is being asked for that makes it significantly more difficult for the other party to reduce without justification. Finally, let us look at the language of receiving acknowledgement. When someone compliments your work, acknowledges your achievement, or expresses admiration for something you have done, the culturally conditioned response is deflection. Oh, it was nothing really. I just got lucky. The team did most of the work. I'm sure anyone could have done the same. These responses feel like humility. In reality, they are a form of social dishonesty. They misrepresent the truth of what was accomplished and who accomplished it. And they make the person offering the acknowledgement feel slightly foolish for having offered something that was immediately returned. The unapologetic response to acknowledgement is simple. Thank you. I'm really proud of how that turned out. I appreciate you saying that. I worked hard on it. Thank you. It means a lot to have that recognized. These responses are not boastful. They are accurate. They receive the acknowledgement rather than deflecting it. And they complete the social exchange in a way that honors both the giver of the acknowledgement and the receiver. Practice this. It will feel uncomfortable at first. The monitoring system will flag it as too much, as immodest, as the kind of thing that invites a negative response. It does not invite a negative response. It invites respect, and continued investment in your success. Chapter 9. Ambition and Rest. The permission to stop without giving up. There is a version of ambition that is not liberation. That is its own kind of prison. The version that has no off switch. That is driven not by genuine desire and genuine love for what you are building, but by the fear of what it means about you if you slow down or stop. That mistakes the relentlessness of the pursuit for the proof of the legitimacy of the ambition. This version is common, and it deserves a chapter of its own. Because many people who are working on reclaiming their ambition overcorrect in a specific direction. They swing from the prison of apologetic smallness into the prison of relentless doing. From the exhaustion of never allowing themselves to fully want to the exhaustion of never allowing themselves to fully rest. Both are prisons. They are just prisons with different decors. Let us be clear about something important. Rest is not the opposite of ambition. It is the condition for it. This is not a platitude. It is a neurological fact. The research on creative cognition, on problem solving, on the generation of novel ideas and solutions, is unambiguous on this point. The most important cognitive processes that support ambitious work do not happen during focused effort. They happen during rest. During unfocused mental time, the brain's default mode network activates. This network, which is suppressed during focused task engagement, is responsible for some of the most important cognitive functions that ambitious work requires. The integration of disparate pieces of information, the generation of creative connections, the processing of complex emotional and social information, the development of insight. Every major creative and intellectual tradition in history has known this, even without the neurological vocabulary. The Greek notion of the muse, the Romantic tradition of inspiration, the Japanese concept of incubation in the creative process, the religious and contemplative traditions across cultures that preserved the practice of Sabbath, of retreat, of the deliberate withdrawal from activity as a prerequisite for the next period of productive engagement. These traditions were not describing weakness or indulgence. They were describing a genuine feature of how the human mind generates its most important work. The ambitious person who never rests is not more productive. They are less productive, and less creative, and less capable of the kind of strategic thinking that distinguishes high-value work from high-volume work. They are also, typically, less happy. Which matters, not as a productivity variable, as an end in itself. Because you are not building your ambitions in order to arrive at a destination where you will finally be allowed to enjoy your life. You are living your life right now, and the quality of that living includes the quality of your rest, your leisure, your relationships, your play, your experiences of beauty and pleasure and meaning that have nothing to do with your professional ambitions. But there is something specifically relevant to ambition and self-permission in the question of rest that goes beyond the productivity argument. Many people who struggle to rest, who feel guilty when they are not working, who experience leisure as anxiety rather than pleasure, have a specific relationship with their own ambition that is worth examining. They believe, at some level, that the relentlessness of their effort is what justifies the scale of their wanting. That if they slow down, the ambition becomes less legitimate. That rest is something they will be allowed when they have earned it through sufficient demonstrable productivity. This belief has the same structure as the apologetic ambition we have been examining throughout this book. It is the monitoring system applied to effort rather than to wanting. It says, "You have not yet done enough to have permission to stop." There is no enough in this framework, because the permission is not actually being generated by the amount of effort. It is being withheld by the monitoring system regardless of the amount of effort. More effort produces more productivity, not more permission. And the person who believes that rest will come when they have done enough will find, when they arrive at each new milestone, that the goalpost has moved and rest is still not yet available. The genuine liberation of ambition includes the liberation of rest. The decision that you do not need to earn permission to tend to yourself. That the ambitious person is not someone who never stops. The ambitious person is someone who knows why they are going, knows when to go hard, and knows when to rest so that the going hard is sustainable over the full arc of a life and a career rather than burning itself out in a single, brilliant, unsustainable sprint. There is also something specific about the permission to enjoy what you have already built that deserves attention. Many ambitious people are so oriented toward the next goal that they never fully experience the satisfaction of the current achievement. They arrive at the destination they have been working toward and immediately, almost reflexively, direct their attention toward the next destination. Not because they are genuinely called there, but because stopping to enjoy what they have built feels somehow self-indulgent. Dangerous. Like it might make them complacent. This is another manifestation of the monitoring system. The monitoring system that says wanting more requires constant justification through effort. That satisfaction is the enemy of ambition. That enjoying what you have is the beginning of losing it. None of this is true. Savoring your achievements, genuinely and fully experiencing the satisfaction of what you have built, does not make you complacent. Research in positive psychology shows the opposite. People who take time to genuinely appreciate and savor their achievements have more resilience, more creative capacity, and more sustained motivation for future ambitious work than people who rush past their achievements without allowing themselves to experience them. Savoring is not complacency. It is the appropriate acknowledgement of a genuine thing. And that acknowledgement, that full experience of having done something real and meaningful, is part of what makes the next ambitious reaching feel genuinely motivated rather than driven by the anxiety that if you stop you will lose everything. You have permission to stop. Not forever. Not in the sense of abandoning your ambitions or retreating to the safety of smallness. In the sense of being a human being who needs to rest, who deserves to savor, who is worth attending to even when the attention is not producing anything measurable. The ambitious life includes this. It must include this, or it is not actually the life you are reaching for. It is just a more elegant version of the prison. Chapter 10. The Ambitious Community, Finding Your People. One of the most important practical decisions you will make in the process of reclaiming your ambition is about community. We have already discussed the social cage and the way your existing social environment maintains your current identity through continuous, largely unconscious reinforcement. We have discussed the compassionate but clear-eyed recognition that some relationships cannot survive your growth. Now we need to talk about what you build instead. Because human beings are social creatures, we need community not just as a practical support structure but as a fundamental requirement for thriving. And the person who reclaims their ambition without building a community that supports it is working with one hand tied behind their back. The ambitious community you need is not the community of people who are more successful than you so that you can network your way to their level. That transactional approach to community building produces relationships that are thin, conditional, and ultimately unsatisfying. The ambitious community you need is the community of people who are genuinely in it with you. Who are pursuing their own significant ambitions with seriousness and integrity. Who understand the specific experience of wanting more than your circumstances currently offer. Who have navigated the social pressures and the internal monitoring systems and the specific costs of visible ambition. And who meet your ambitions not with skepticism or subtle undermining but with the particular warmth of genuine recognition. This kind of community is transformative in ways that are hard to fully appreciate until you have experienced it. The normalization effect is the most immediate and the most powerful. When you are surrounded by people who are ambitious, when ambitious conversation is the default register of your social environment, the experience of ambitious wanting stops feeling exceptional or dangerous or in need of defense. It feels normal. And as we have explored at length, what feels normal is what homeostasis works to maintain. When ambitious conversation, ambitious planning, ambitious mutual encouragement is the water you are swimming in, the monitoring system begins to recalibrate. The ambition stops feeling like a deviation from the social norm and starts feeling like the expression of it. This recalibration, driven by social environment rather than individual cognitive effort, is one of the most powerful and most sustainable forms of permission structure change available. The second function of the ambitious community is genuine, informed accountability. Not the accountability of someone who is going to shame you for falling short. The accountability of someone who understands the specific challenges of your particular ambitious journey and who is invested enough in your success to tell you the truth when you are falling into the old patterns. Who will notice when you are downscaling your ask before the negotiation has begun? Who will call out the preemptive disclaimer in the meeting? Who will gently point out that the way you just described your achievement to the new contact was smaller than what you actually did? This kind of accountability is only available in relationships where you are known well enough and trusted enough that the observation can be received as care rather than criticism. And building those relationships requires time, vulnerability, and the willingness to show up in the community as a full person rather than a professional persona. The third function of the ambitious community is the expansion of the possible. When you see, up close, the specific journey of someone who has achieved something you have been telling yourself is not available to you, the story changes. Not through inspiration in the abstract sense. Through the concrete evidence that the specific obstacle you have been treating as a wall is actually a challenge that other people have navigated. That the thing you have been saying is not possible for someone like you is actually possible, has actually been done, by people who started from similar circumstances and faced similar constraints. This evidence operates at the level of the nervous system rather than the intellect. It is not primarily a cognitive update. It is the felt experience of the possible expanding, of the ceiling, which seemed fixed, revealing itself as movable. Building this community is itself an act of ambition. It requires the willingness to put yourself in rooms where you do not yet belong by merit of your current position. To introduce yourself as the person you are becoming rather than the person you currently are on paper. To invest in relationships that are genuinely reciprocal rather than strategically one-directional. It requires, in other words, the same willingness to take up space that reclaiming your ambition more broadly requires. And it produces, in return, something that no amount of individual effort, individual motivation, or individual determination can fully replace. The experience of not being alone in your wanting. Of being surrounded by people who look at the scale of what you are reaching for and say, not who do you think you are, but yes, and what can I do to help? Chapter 11. The Legacy of Unapologetic Ambition, What You Owe the World. We have spent this entire audiobook focused on the individual dimension of reclaiming ambition. On the internal work, the language, the community, the practical changes that move a person from apologetic smallness to unapologetic full expression of their potential. Now, in these final pages, I want to zoom out to the largest possible frame. Because there is a dimension of ambition that most conversations about it miss entirely. A dimension that, once you understand it, changes the moral weight of the choice to stay small. Your ambition is not just about you. I want to sit with that for a moment. Because it runs counter to one of the most pervasive narratives about ambition. The narrative that treats ambitious wanting as inherently self-centered, as a deviation from the social goods of community, service, and contribution. This narrative is precisely backwards. The expression of your full potential, the refusal to live a smaller life than you are capable of living, is one of the most generous things you can do for the world. Here is why. Every person who unapologetically pursues their full potential expands the map of the possible for everyone around them. Not through inspiration in the vague, motivational poster sense. Through the concrete, observable evidence that this level of achievement is available. That this kind of life can be built. That the ceiling is higher than the general consensus suggested. This matters most for the people who share your particular demographic, your particular background, your particular combination of circumstances that the dominant narrative says limits what is possible. The first person from a working-class family to make it to a particular room does something that goes beyond their own achievement. They make the room visible to everyone else from working-class families who never knew it was accessible. They change the story of what is possible for people like them. The woman who breaks through to a level of achievement that women were not previously represented at does something that goes beyond her own success. She changes the internal permission structure of every ambitious woman who observes it. She creates evidence that the nervous system can absorb, that this is possible. That the story of who gets to be here is more expansive than previously believed. You are not just building your own life when you pursue your full ambition. You are expanding the map for everyone who comes behind you. And when you shrink, when you make yourself smaller than you are, when you apologize for your wanting and retreat to the safety of the established norm, you are not just shortchanging yourself. You are narrowing the map. You are confirming the story that the ceiling is where everyone has agreed it is. You are, however inadvertently, contributing to the social permission structure that keeps other people as stuck as you were before you began reading this book. This is not blame. You were not shrinking because you wanted to limit anyone else's possibilities. You were shrinking because you were trying to survive a social environment that made full expression costly. But now that you understand the mechanism, now that you have the full picture of what staying small costs not just you but everyone in your vicinity, the choice to continue shrinking carries a different moral weight. You owe it to yourself to stop apologizing. We have covered that at length. But you also owe it to the people who are watching you. Who are reading the story your life is telling about what is possible. Who are, in the specific ways that are available to them, updating their own permission structure based on what they observe in yours. They need you to be big. Not for the sake of achievement in the abstract. For the sake of what your bigness tells them about their own capacity. About the space that is available for people like them. About what is possible when someone decides to stop apologizing and start living from the full scope of what they are capable of. Your ambition is not just your ambition. It is your contribution. And withholding it, apologizing for it, making it smaller and safer and less threatening to the people who are made uncomfortable by the real size of what you are capable of, is not modesty. It is a refusal of your responsibility to the world that needs what only you, living at full capacity, can give it. You have spent too long apologizing. For wanting more, for knowing your worth, for refusing to accept a life that is a fraction of what you are actually capable of. For having standards that make others uncomfortable. For the size of your dreams, the scale of your goals, the audacity of believing that the life you want is actually available to you. You have shrunk in meetings, in negotiations, in conversations, in the privacy of your own mind where the monitoring system has been doing its work long before anyone external had a chance to tell you to be smaller. You have deflected acknowledgments, downscaled asks, hedged ideas, preemptively apologized for ambitions that deserved no apology at all. You have done all of this not because you are weak or small or somehow less than the people who seem to move through their ambitions without this particular weight. You have done it because you were given a message before you had the tools to evaluate it. Before you had the context to understand where it came from and whose interests it served and what it was costing you in the specific, irreplaceable currency of your one life. You know now where the message came from. You know it came from family systems that were trying to protect you with the only framework they had available. From social environments that were trying to manage the discomfort that visible ambition creates. From cultural narratives about gender and class and who gets to want things and how much that have served certain interests at the direct expense of yours. You know that none of these messages were verdicts on your actual potential. They were the particular limitations of the particular systems that delivered them. And you know what they have cost you. In the specific texture of your daily life. In the opportunities not pursued, the asks not made, the full ideas not expressed, the achievements not claimed, the life not fully lived. You know what it would mean to stop. Stop apologizing. Stop shrinking. Stop making yourself smaller than you are so that others are more comfortable with the space you take up. This is not a small thing. We have explored at length how deeply the monitoring system runs. How thoroughly the permission structure has been internalized. How persistently the homeostatic mechanisms work to return you to the established small. This is real work. It is the work of a lifetime, not a weekend. It requires the daily practice of choosing the fuller expression over the safer one. The complete ask over the downscaled one. The clear statement over the hedged one. The genuine acknowledgement over the deflection. It requires building the community that supports the new identity you are constructing. Curating the language that reflects the full scope of your wanting. Finding the people who will meet your ambitions with recognition rather than skepticism. It requires the courage to grieve what genuine growth costs in some of your closest relationships. The courage to occupy the discomfort of being fully visible, fully ambitious, fully yourself, in environments that have been comfortable with a smaller version of you. It requires all of this. And it is worth every bit of it. Because on the other side of the apology is your life. Your actual life. The one that exists when you stop negotiating with your own potential and start living from it. The meetings where you say the full thing and the room responds with the particular respect that honest, unhedged contribution earns. The negotiations where you ask for what you are worth and discover that worth is exactly what was on offer for someone who believes in it. The relationships that survive and deepen in the presence of your full self because they were built for exactly this person rather than the smaller, safer version. The days that feel like yours. That carry the particular quality of aliveness that comes from living in alignment with the full scope of what you are capable of rather than the fraction that the monitoring system decreed was allowed. That aliveness is not arrogance. That aliveness is not selfishness. That aliveness is not the kind of ambition that harms others or sacrifices integrity on the altar of achievement. It is simply you, living fully, wanting honestly, reaching for what you actually believe your life is for without the preemptive apology that has been standing between you and it for too long. The apology is over. What you do next is entirely, completely, unapologetically yours. Begin.